Max Verstappen, the three-time Formula One world champion, was made to sweat for his 14th Grand Prix win of the season in Qatar, but hot under the collar because of the extreme conditions rather than any immediate threat to his victory today. Verstappen led from lights to flag. His rivals were close to passing out, some even taken to the medical centre. Dripping sweat all over the media pen. Watch where you're stepping. The headlines were also dominated by the FIA Tyre Mandate that committed the teams to 3 pit stops as the pit crews and the strategists earn their paychecks. I'm Martyn Lee from the Autosport podcast, and to help me unpack this weekend are one of the voices from the track is Matt Q, and Sam Hall, who's also just in his spare time, like he's not working enough this weekend, watching Bathurst 1000. So your internal body clock is all over the place. Gentlemen, welcome to the video today. Let's get into it. And so let's talk, well, firstly about the FIA mandate. It gave the teams a very short amount of time to rejig all of their strategies and put it all back into their supercomputers and work out what the best thing to do was. Matt, can you give us the background to this and how you think it panned out?
Yeah, I'll try and do it as concisely as possible. But so since 2021, the track was resurfaced and new curbs installed as part of this sort of 10-year hosting contract for Qatar. The curbs were done to FIA standard, but at the edge they've got this sharp drop-off pyramid curbs and they're raised by about 5 centimetres. So as the drivers go across them at high speed, they're sort of banging against the sidewall. No teams noticed any problems, but Pirelli in their free practice analysis noticed a load of tears. So they ahead of the sprint race sort of identified this, told the teams, told us all at the same time. The teams weren't given a heads up, but that's because they wanted it out in the public as soon as possible because this was a safety thing, give us people as much time to react. So they mandated a tyre life cycle of 20 laps for the sprint race and changed the track limits by moving like the painted white lines to keep drivers off the curbs. They had a 10-minute acclimatization session and then the sprint. The sprint was a bit hectic though. We had 3 safety cars, which meant even though it ran for 9 laps, there were only sort of 12 racing laps. And because of that and the interruptions and the way the sort of the tyres behaved and thermal and then having to brake in between while they were off the curb, safety car, meant Pirelli didn't actually have any new data to go on. So they're still with what they learned from FP1 on Friday, sprint race weekend, only 1 practice session. And then they brought down the tyre life cycle to 18 laps for the race. So this was not imposing a 3-stop strategy. But because you can only have sort of 18 laps tyres, you needed to have 3 stops to make the 57 lap distance. So it's sort of good from the FIA, Pirelli reacting so quickly, but also farcical, biggest tyre stupidity since Indy 2005. And while sort of we woke up today expecting madness, actually what it did, I thought, was create an incredibly predictable race where within sort of a cluster of 5 laps, you knew who was stopping and when.
And Sam, that also led to no strategies where drivers were going easy on their tyres. It was just a bunch of quali laps and going flat out, which did lead to track limit penalties left, right and centre as the drivers were giving it the full beans. What did you think of those track limits coming in and the time penalties handed out?
I'm a big fan of track limits actually being enforced properly. When they said they were going to do black and white rules, so if you essentially, like in football, if you go offside, you're offside. You're done. You're just offside, and there's no quibbling about it. And now they're doing this in Formula One, which is perfect because you've got to have a field of play, and if you go beyond that, you're off the pitch. It's the same for everyone. Yes, it was hot. Yes, it was really, really tricky conditions. And that makes sticking to these track limits, which were just painted lines. They were just, the curbs were moved in, I think it was 80 centimetres they were pulled in by. So drivers had a 10-minute session to get their references. And you can argue all day whether it is right or wrong, but ultimately the FIA and F1 actually acted. This wasn't America 2005 again. They actually did something. And they avoided something that could have been quite embarrassing.
Matt, have you spoken to any of the drivers yourself? Because we saw them having trouble getting out of the cars. Ocon said he was sick in his helmet, and Sargent even had to retire and seek emergency medical help. Norris told several media outlets afterwards that he saw drivers fainting in the medical room afterwards. Is Formula One pushing these incredible athletes? Let's not, mess about with how fit these young men are. They train every day, the world's best sportsmen, and yet, they're just getting to the end of what they can physically do. Has Formula One pushed them just that little bit too far?
There is that argument, and I know some people go, look, you're getting paid millions of pounds, you can drive in whatever conditions, sort of stop throwing your toys out the pram. But like you say, they are athletes and arguably sort of fitter than many sort of traditional, if you like, sports players, because they have to be physical everywhere. It's not just, lean to be a marathon runner, and that comes to mind because Mo Farah is on the grid, or brilliant at taking free kicks because David Beckham was here. You have to be all round brilliant. So if they are passing out, vomiting in the car as per Esteban Ocon, or retiring like Logan Sargent, and so on, then yeah, you're probably pushing drivers too far. Couple of factors at play. So we're racing here later in the 6 weeks difference from where we were when we were in 2021. So it's hotter. It's been very humid today, even compared to the other days. And there is an argument to say that because we've moved to ground effects, cars are running a lot lower and a lot stiffer, so more vibrations on the body. But drivers are saying like it was like being a fighter pilot. So when you're pulling more and more G, you're starting to grey around the edges, losing your vision, risking passing out, risking crashes. So if they're all saying that, then yeah, it probably is a bit too extreme. GDPA, so George Russell, I know they're looking into that a lot and what can be done to avoid it. Whether drivers, Russell was taking both hands off his steering wheel to cool himself on the main straight. Drivers opening their visors. Yuki Tsunoda then having to shut his visor because he just got sort of a mouthful of sand coming through. So it's probably a bit above and beyond. But it provided some good racing driver excuses that because they were losing their vision around the edge, they then couldn't see the track limit. So, of course, they were straying over. But the media pen was sodden by the end of it. And there's a sort of a mixed odor of sheer BO, and then BO covered up with lashings of aftershave, or George Russell, who then had an ice bath and chilled himself to the bone, so turned up in a jumper.
Very nice. Let's talk a little bit about those Mercedes drivers. Matt, first of all, I'll ask you what you thought of that Turn 1 incident. Hamilton turned in on Russell, who had nowhere to go because Verstappen was the other side. Hamilton was on a faster tyre, but took immediate responsibility for that. Someone kind of broke the internet. I saw they did an overlay of Verstappen and Hamilton and Russell, obviously the Silverstone incident, and they're pretty much identical. Obviously, nobody on the inside of Hamilton at Silverstone, but I was like, oof, yeah, they are pretty much, the geometry of them is pretty much the same. Hamilton taking full blame for that, saying I turned in, there was nowhere for Russell to go. How did you read that?
Yeah, actually, the comparison that Alex Kalinauckas, our colleague, made, which I think was fair, is actually it was very similar to Hamilton versus Alonso at Les Combes in Spa last year, where he sort of just loses his reference points and turns in when a car's there. And they obviously split strategy. So it was Hamilton, looking at my notes, launching on the faster soft tyres, and they absolutely had to work together if they had any chance of going after Verstappen, and if that's a bit far-fetched, and getting a double podium when to beat Ferrari in a Constructors' Championship. Bear in mind that they've also learned that Sainz won't be starting the race because he had a fuel leak. So it was really, really sloppy. Not the first time those two have had the little contretemps, whether that be the couple of qualifying brushes they had. I think Barcelona stands out for that one. I think there was another one more recently, I just can't quite remember. Russell citing on the radio Suzuka. But I did find it amusing how they both sort of changed tack, didn't they? So Hamilton going, what on earth is he doing? And then tweets to say it's 100% my fault. And then Russell, as the race goes on, going, I'm really sorry, guys, for my part in that. As if sort of actually leaving him some wiggle room to take some blame. Stewards decided no further action, although they've slapped Hamilton with a fine for sort of crossing the track to come back too early. I'm sure he can afford it. And it did lead to that great slow-mo image of him sort of skulking back and then Russell's Mercedes going by. But I think it was, Hamilton is right to declare himself to be wholly or predominantly to blame for that one.
Sam, Toto Wolff has been at home recovering from surgery for the last couple of races, and those two races we've seen his drivers getting too close this weekend and pretty touchy last time out. This is damaging for Hamilton because you and I have talked about how he's got a genuine shot at beating Perez to second if only he hadn't blown some points today.
Yeah, I think P2 is Hamilton's potentially to lose because I don't think Perez has got the ability or the form at the moment to hold that position. But yeah, this was just a bit messy today, and I totally agree with Matt there that Hamilton was at fault, but he's the one. My mind immediately went to actually Barcelona 2016. I was just straight away going, oh no, it's two Mercedes again. But yeah, there was nowhere George could go. It was, I reckon if it wasn't two drivers from the same team, we would have seen a penalty for that because as Lewis freely admitted himself, he was to blame. So if he's saying he's wholly or predominantly to blame, that invokes a penalty 9 out of 10 times. Toto Wolff's got his work cut out to keep both these drivers happy and to fix this situation because on track they seem to not be able to work together now. You see the McLarens. Yes, Lando Norris wasn't happy about having to sort of back off and not challenge Oscar, but he did it. But these two don't seem to want to work together. We saw in Suzuka the argument about should we try the Carlos Sainz DRS trick or should we not? And this is just a bit messy, and it's almost like Mercedes of old with Rosberg and Hamilton. It's not the harmony that we saw with Bottas and Hamilton, shall we say.
Matt, let's talk McLaren as Sam's mentioned it. Incredible drive in the sprint from Oscar to win that, but actually a very, very impressive drive today in the Grand Prix. He said his racecraft was lacking in it was Japan, I think it was. He was really hard on himself after that. And McLaren as well had a look at Red Bull's concept and went, we can do that. Had a look at Red Bull's record pit stop times and went, we can do better than that. And they did 1.8 seconds today, fastest of the season. How impressive is this in-season development, Matt, from this team and this driver pairing?
It's massive, isn't it? Because if Mercedes don't hit the ground running, and James Allison has said that he's never worked with a driver that's sort of got into a car on the first day of the season and said it's a shed, and then it's become a winner. So from that first lap if it's going to be good or not. So if Mercedes aren't mega next season, it is up to McLaren to take the fight to Red Bull, because then you're into 2025 and you're focusing on the new car. So their improvement has been mega. I've waxed lyrical about Andrea Stella. Their driver pairing is excellent. Oscar Piastri is putting together a rookie season for the ages. Their execution is good, like you say. It's the pit stops, the strategy, the even the controlling their drivers. So telling Norris to back off. It's all their ducks are in a row. It's so impressive, isn't it? Their in-season gains are above and beyond any other team. Aston Martin going backwards. And Mercedes and Ferrari nowhere near sort of the step forward that McLaren have taken.
Sam, and in that constructors' battle, they're 11 points behind Aston Martin now, and Aston scoring points with one driver, and only 70-something behind Ferrari, but that's probably wishful thinking for McLaren with so few races still to go. That's an important battle in the constructors, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't see that 70 points to Ferrari as being a stretch, really, because it was only 2 weeks ago, I think, we were saying McLaren was 70-odd points off of Aston Martin, and they might just about do it at the last race. So they're getting these double podiums, they're getting consistent podiums now, and would you honestly say McLaren can't do it? I think on form, they've got arguably, if not the best car, they've got the second best car on the grid. You could easily argue that it's better than the Red Bull and it's just Max Verstappen that's better than the two McLaren drivers. So I think they've got a car that can get them to where they want, to ahead of Ferrari, let's put it that way. I don't see any higher than that, but Aston Martin's just they're a sitting duck now. Fernando Alonso knows it. And with what Lance Stroll isn't doing in that car at the moment, it's not even a challenge, is it, really, to beat Aston Martin for McLaren?
Okay, right, let's talk Max Verstappen. Matt, have you had the chance to catch up with many press conferences this weekend? How's he been? In the end, I kind of liked him winning it on a sprint race because I felt for Oscar, because Oscar won and then had to go through all the lights and the barriers and the signage saying Max Verstappen world champion. So that was a little bit of glory missed. He'll be fine, I'm sure. But it allowed Red Bull to kind of have that weekend party. He was always going to win it somewhere. So let's use this opportunity as more of a reflection over the season and how you think he might approach the rest of with the 5 races to go now.
I'm afraid, Martin, I'm going to have to disagree. I thought a sprint race and your teammate crashing out to settle it was such an underwhelming way to win the title. And I mean, after Abu Dhabi 2021 and the no one getting their sums right in Japan last year, and now this, you must think, oh, bloody hell, oh, come on, let me win it on a Sunday in a normal fashion and stand on top of a podium. But he's been mega, and he's so unwavering. Sort of, very soon into the special champions press conference they do, he was like, "Yep, it will be normal for me to wake up one day with this appetite gone. No, I'm not chasing records. No, I don't need Ferrari to be mega or Perez to be mega for me to up my game. This is just where I'm at." And yeah, I think sort of he's already answered the second part of your question, which from the sprint race into today, which is he will not back off at all, and it's with the final 5 races or allow errors to creep in. I don't think that is because he's chasing win records or whatever. I think he's like absolutely in the groove, isn't he? Everything's come towards him. And as Sam sort of alluded to when he's talking about McLaren, I would still put the RB19 as the best car, and I would still and Perez is absolutely shot for confidence. But the gulf between them, at some point there is that middle line, and Perez is so far below it because of his confidence and whatever. But Max is so far above it because of what he's doing. It's been a mesmeric performance. There's been so few errors. He's almost unflappable to the point of, well, I would say sheer cockiness, isn't it? Where he's going, right, GP, let me pit for fastest lap and take an extra point. It has been a really complete performance, and he capped it off today to the point where, okay, it was the team dictating the pace, but it's not often you hear Max be told to get a hurry up, but they had progressed through the weekend to have more tyre life under this mandated sort of stint length compared to everyone else. And then in the final 10 laps, his race engineer was like, right, come on, put your foot down. If there's a safety car or anything, we need to have everything under control. And even though that didn't happen, everything was under control, as it has been, aside from Singapore, all season.
Yeah, Piastri 4.8 seconds behind at the flag, but no doubt Red Bull suboptimal strategy, didn't pit probably when they probably would have done ideally in terms of strategy, and very much not being able to use that, some of the killer parts of the RB19, which is their tyre management, because, they didn't have to do much tyre management, so missing out on some of those things. Sam, before we go, we didn't have silly season this year because the driver contracts are pretty much sewn up, but we have suddenly got into pressure cooker season. Lance Stroll punching the garage wall and, even worse, shoving his trainer out of the way. He has since apologised. And, Logan Sargent fighting for a drive and just having to retire because he just can't do it. And overdriving that Williams as well. And then Sergio Perez, who I'm actually starting to feel sorry for. And yes, dear viewers, I think you can feel sorry for multi-millionaire sports people. He'll have a fine life when he retires, but I don't want to watch somebody breaking down in real time in front of the world. In the interviews afterwards, Sam, Perez looked broken, like he was overdriving that car, couldn't keep it on the track. Time penalty after time penalty. He's got no answer to Verstappen, but he's kind of falling apart in front of us at the moment. Am I over-egging the pudding? Do you read it in any way similar?
Yeah, no, you're not over-egging it at all. He did look a broken man, and you could hear it in his voice. He didn't want to be there, and it was so weird because normally with Checo, sort of, he's got a lot of energy about him. But I think he knows how dire the situation is, and I think he's seen Liam Lawson come in and perform, so he knows that now not only is there Daniel Ricciardo, who's looming over his shoulder, but potentially there's Liam Lawson, and so there is eventually someone's going to disappear from this Red Bull setup. And if you had to choose out of Verstappen, Lawson, Tsunoda, Ricciardo and Perez, at the moment you've got to say the one that you would get rid of probably is Checo. And we've all got short memories because you forget what he did at Racing Point. You forget sort of all these other results he's had and how good of a driver he is. He's not a terrible driver by any stretch. And it is just sort of sad. There comes a point where you kind of want to stop kicking him and pointing out these mistakes because you go, come on, enough. Sort of. Lance Stroll, however, as you say, a driver under pressure. I doubt he is under pressure because we know who owns that team.
He's not losing his drive, is he? Let's face it.
No, but neither's Logan Sargent either, I don't think. I think that Williams have made clear, or James Vowles has made clear, he wants to make it work with Logan Sargent, even though he was in the team before James joined. So I think Logan has another half season at least. If he's not, if by the summer break next year things haven't gone well, I think at that point there might be a break that comes in, but he's going to stay.
Gentlemen, thank you. Matt, go and get yourself in an ice bath with George Russell. Not with George Russell. Or maybe if you want to. That's totally your call.
Both very tall. I don't think there's room.
Thank you for watching the video today. We'd love to hear your comments on the win, the battles, the ice baths. Let us know what you thought about today and other topics that we have discussed. We'd love to hear what's on your mind as we approach the run-in to the rest of the season. Give us a like if you haven't done already and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a video that we make. Thanks for watching and we'll catch you on the next one.